Alright, so Necromus showcase, showing why this pal is probably the strongest pal in the game in terms of just pure pal DPS against the tower bosses. Going to be discussing a little bit about the build, then showing Necromus compared to Libro and Shadowbeak, to other top tier pals, also Dark as well, with these exclusive skills Nightmare Bloom and Divine Disaster 1 and 2 compared to this Twin Spears and Rockburst combo. So this build, this pure attack one with Demon God Legend, Musclehead Serenity, we got Serenity and then Vampiric Demon God Legend. And then the same build, but instead you have Musclehead instead of Legend. So no Vampiric and then two different Vampiric builds. And I can say right off the bat that the Musclehead one will not see a lot of use. Due to like some diminishing return stuff, you're only seeing a very slight attack bonus compared to losing out on like 15 to 18% damage resistance with Legend. Just using Legend, you lose out 10% stats, but it's or attack, but it's closer to 6% with diminishing returns. While the 20% defense is pretty nice, especially with Vampiric. And then for this build, it's gonna be showcased a little bit. There's 3 different playstyles that are gonna be shown in this video. It's the one where you just watch your pal solo everything. Then you might want Vampiric and Legend on it. Then you have the one where you help it a little bit, where you mount up, do some extra Rockburst damage up close, but generally still letting it do something. And then when you add player damage, if you have good enough gear, you start taking aggro from the pal, then you can skip Vampiric again. So Vampiric is kind of a carry passive until player damage takes over, and you start using Gobfins, legendary quad missiles or plasma cannon, stuff like that. Then you can stop using Vampiric and go just pure attack. So it depends a little bit if you're running like a bunch of Hukratis boosters or Gobfins for yourself. So we're going to jump straight into the comparison video against the other 2 pals, and then we're going to show some tower boss fights and discuss the build and the stats on the Necromus. Alright, so we're starting with the Shadowbeak against Cyan Celine, so not the Necromus. A little bit of a different way of doing the showcase than what I usually do. I'm hoping this will sort of highlight the Necromus like strengths and weaknesses a bit more. Gonna show the 3 different playstyles and the DPS comparison against some close pals like this, and you can say like some recommendations or some feedback in the comments how you feel about this way of comparing pals. So it's gonna be just like comparing how Necromus, Bellinor, Libro and Shadowbeak compare, just doing DPS next to the player. It's just normal mode Saya, gonna see how quickly they kill the boss and without any booster pals. So assuming these pals are just fighting next to you when you're using your Gobfin build, it's only gonna test like how much DPS they're doing. Shadowbeak does have a little bit higher like defense stat. Necromus has very high attack and pretty high defensive stats. Then we have Shadowbeak having 2 Divine Disasters, Libro having an extremely high attack stat but still only having 1 exclusive skill, and the Twin Spears versus Rockburst combo. So it's gonna compare all of these a little bit against each other. So we got the Shadowbeak kill time just under a minute. And Nightmare Bloom is a little bit better against bigger targets because it sort of fans out towards the end. And then it misses a little bit. Beam Slicer just strong. Blast Cannon also pretty strong. So Libro has the benefit of running 2 super effective skills, while Rockburst and Twin Spears and Divine Disaster 1 and 2 won't be super effective, but they'll still be pretty effective. Okay, so she didn't get frozen until after Nightmare Bloom sort of fanned out. So that shouldn't be a huge DPS loss for Libro there. Not getting huge hits with the Blast Cannon and Beam Slicer as well, but decent hits. A little bit of a dodge there as well. Looking pretty good. Not getting stunned by the Star Mine either is also pretty nice. So this is also a Siren of the Void Libro. Could have been maybe a little bit faster with some like Musclehead Ferocious kind of build instead. But should still be a pretty representative DPS number. It does get a little bit of burn as well for added benefit. But still times a little bit slower, like 11 seconds slower than the Shadowbeak did. So Shadowbeak's 2 exclusive skills making up for the slightly lower attack, and then just having high defense is a huge benefit for Shadowbeak. It does have a pretty big hitbox though against like Holy Burst and stuff like that. It gets hit quite hard by Beam Slicer and Blast Cannon. And here you can see the Necromus combo kind of starting to do its thing. Getting close with the Twin Spears. You can see how many hits it actually does until it gets stunned there. So not great. And then just a big Rockburst. I don't know if you can see how far the health dropped there. I might have put the text a little bit in the way. but pretty huge hits, and then just the beam slicer for a little bit added damage. But you can see all those twin spears as well. It's not a bad skill at all. The benefit of getting close for a huge rock burst is also nice. But you can see Necromus killed it like 60% faster than the Libro, using Libro as a baseline there. Shadowbeak 20% faster, not a huge difference there. But Necromus also has these great stats. So this is the other playstyle I was talking about. This is 4 Hucrates and a Necromus just carrying itself with Vampiric. The blind effect also doing its thing. But you can see the total stats that Necromus just behind Frostallion knocked in total amount of stats overall. But it does get the twin spears instead of Crystal Wing, which is quite a lot better. This doesn't count using the mounted damage as well. So this is just pure stats. You can see the attack only 5 lower than Libro. Shadowbeak doesn't have very high attack at all. It's more of a tank pal, but the benefit for Shadowbeak is 2 exclusive attacks, giving it quite a lot of firepower as well. But it's not a bad amount of defense on these legendary pals either. So this is the second playstyle showing here. So the first playstyle was just what you can do to let the pal carry you. You can do some withdrawal dodging as well against the more difficult tower bosses, but you can solo them all with just that Hucrates and Necromus doing its own thing. I think you can just kind of sit back and watch up until Saya, at which point you need to do the withdrawal dodging against like Airblade, maybe Holy Burst, just a little bit of a mix of attacks that you need to withdraw dodge. But the benefit of mounting up is that you can then position the Rockburst. You can also position the Blast Cannon. It's not a big deal, but you can see it's also hard to manually use the Twin Spears. It's easier against bigger targets, but you can see why Twin Spears, it's not only the positioning, it also does a huge amount of damage. Just comparing these top exclusive skills like Nightmare Bloom and the Divine Disasters against these smaller targets like Saya and Björn, Twin Spears is actually one of the highest, or the highest DPS skill by quite a large margin. Against Victor, it's a little bit weaker than Nightmare Bloom and Nightmare Ray, but it doesn't get, you don't get this sort of 10-second animation time lock that easily gets stunned. So the Twin Spears just ends up doing higher damage overall than Nightmare Bloom, I'd say, in like a real scenario. Maybe not if the pal is, if you're tanking for the pal, but in most cases. Then you also get this mount up bonus compared to Libro. You can't use any saddle on Libro, mount up and use a Rockburst effect. Shadowbeak you can do that on, and you get the double damage on Dark. But it's kind of hard to sit mounted on Shadowbeak, even with Vampiric against like the hard mode tower bosses. You usually just want to mount up and then send the attack and leave. So yeah, pretty good tank there. The good benefit of Rockburst is hitting those Saya clones or whatever they are, the ads as well. It's a pretty nice actually if you do manage to get them bursted down. You can use like Beam Slice or Blast Cannon and some other skill, and usually you kill them. And the Vampiric effect for killing them is pretty nice on the pal. It heals up just enough to sort of finish down the last of the Saya health. But it's a pretty common thing against, I'd say pretty common against Saya and Xenolord. When you kill the last ads, you're always thinking that it's smooth sailing from there. And that's kind of when you let your guard down and die probably. And a huge Rockburst hit to finish her off. So that's the second playstyle there, adding the mounted effect, not just sitting back, but doing that extra little Rockburst. Maybe even adding a Blast Cannon. And this is the third playstyle here. So starting off with just white gear and Vampiric against Björn. So the problem with using Necromus is that even with the Gobfin build, using just white gear, your DPS is too low. You can see how I keep losing aggro, having to withdraw dodge, which isn't terrible. Like you can withdraw dodge and then heals up with Vampiric pretty fine. It's just a little bit annoying compared to like actually using a weaker pal that doesn't take aggro. But this is the third playstyle that I wanted to show, which is just this fighting alongside your pal. So playstyle 1 was just passive. Playstyle 2 adding that mounted bonus, or not mounted bonus, but the mounted Rockburst. And this is the third one, which is probably the more common one, which is just fighting alongside your pal. And with Necromus it can get a little bit tricky against Björn if you don't have the best weapons. So this is with Vampiric as well, to sort of embrace that healing effect when you're losing aggro. You don't have to withdraw dodge that much. So this is the second build, the one I was mentioning at the start of the video, just a pure attack build. And this is what you can do when you have your pure legendary gear. So this is legendary rocket launchers and quad launchers, 4 legendary weapons, just starting the fight off, shooting like crazy. And this allows you to run this Necromus without Vampiric, because you just take aggro immediately from Bjorn, and then you just kind of hold it. Random Rockburst and Flame Funnels and missiles will usually take care of the ads. You don't really need to focus on them at all. And you get this very respectable kill time with Necromus on Bjorn as well, using this Flame Funnel, Twin Spears, Rockburst. So from all the pals I've tested with this exact build on the player damage, so nothing different there, just the same pal player setup, this Necromus is the best one outside of Vixen. Which pretty much means that if you just want to breed one pal, Necromus is the best combat pal for these tower bosses. And then if you do want the absolute best for each one particular pal for each fight, that's when you start adding these Vixens, Anubis, Azure mains, stuff like that. But even then, Necromus is probably one of the better options against most of the tower bosses anyway. Just from the DPS, especially against like the electric tower bosses and the ones weak to Holy Burst. There's no real reason to use that Gobfin build, or the Gobfins with the element swap. So it's really just that Anubis and Vixen build or something like that. So for now, thanks for watching.